Do you want?
Good morning, colleagues. So we are going to open officially the second day. So I will just check with the Secretariat that we have the quorum. We have the quorum? Okay, so I'm opening officially the second day of our seventh board meeting. I would like to thank everyone for the active afternoon that you had yesterday with the facilitation groups. We had a first exchange with the co-facilitator, with Richard, this morning. And it seems that these discussions have been productive and that we will be able to get some input from this group. What we plan on doing is to have a few items discussed this morning as coherent with the provisional agenda that you received. Then we will break for lunch and we will give the group one hour to discuss the final proposal that could be given to us. And then we will have to work them out in the afternoon in order to be able to propose to the board later this evening the set of proposals that could be presented tomorrow to the board, in order for you also to look at them overnight and maybe to go back to your capitals if you need to do so. As said yesterday, that's not the end of our work. As you know, the outcome of this discussion on BIM will have to be integrated in the terms of reference of the call for funding request. This is the last piece of document that we should aim at adopting by the end of tomorrow evening. I understand from the co-facilitators that, yes, Elena and Gerard, that some of you are interested to understand better what form will take the terms of reference. So we are working with the Secretariat to give you some highlights of what is a term of reference and what could be the one we could be adopting tomorrow. It's just fair. Obviously, as we said, a lot of input are linked with the discussion on funding criteria, funding cycle, and access modalities. So obviously, it really depends on the decision you are going to take, hopefully, tomorrow. So that has to be prepared, obviously, but it's good for you to understand that the structure of this terms of reference, which will be the basis for launching the call for proposal. So this is pretty much how we propose to work over this day, starting with the items on the work plan, administrative budget for the Secretariat, then work plan for the board, and then the performance evaluation of the executive director in 2 parts: report from the co-chair on the assessment for last year, and the 6 months of this year, and then how we could proceed for the next year, from July this year to July next year. So if there is no comment or question on this process, I propose that we turn now to agenda 6. Agenda item 6, work plans and administrative budget of the fund for responding to loss and damage for 2026.
That's wrong. So the plan of the board.
The first item is not this one.
6B.
Budget of the, oh yeah, okay. So sorry for that. We're now turning to the agenda 6B, which is the work plan for the board. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So the board has before it the document FRLD/B7/6, work plan for the board for 2026. And this work plan includes the deliverable and associated timelines for 2026, including recurring and ongoing activities carried over from the previous work plans of the board, as well as new activities included in accordance with decision of the board. Obviously, some of the activities will be decided during this board meeting, so there are some placeholders in the document to include the decision that could potentially be taken over this board meeting. While it is a one-year work plan, the document also includes an Outlook 2027 deliverable in order to facilitate longer-term planning and prioritization. And I would like now to open the floor for any comment and feedback from the board. I hope you have been able to look at it over the last day and night, and I'd be happy to get your views and comment on that. Richard, you want to add? Well,
Yeah, thanks, JC. I just want to add that the work plan and the sequencing of the timing of when certain issues come to the board is a joint assessment between the Secretariat and ourselves of what is feasible, right? So, of course, we can change everything around, but if you're asking for certain things that may take a little bit longer than 3 months to develop, it's going to be challenging for us. So it's an attempt to try and manage and arrange those issues that we've been mandated in board decisions, as well as those issues that have been mandated in the governing instrument that we've yet to consider in a timeline. And again, as I said to my constituency this morning, while a year is 365 days, a board year is 9 days, right? So we meet for 9 days a year. So just please remember that the workload to get 9 days is high, and of course we're flexible to move things around, but we have to consider the workload in general to everything, and that the Secretariat and the BIM delivery team has an additional workload which will relate to, as from B9, if that's the timeline that we agree, that they would start doing the assessment of funding proposals for us to consider. So that does have an impact on the policy cycle and the work that we need to do, we're scheduled to do in the coming year. So just please, we're flexible to move things around, so there's nothing like it can't be done, but there is a capacity, ability, both from the co-chair side as well as the Secretariat side, and then there's also we continue to work on the implementing the governing instrument or the rules of procedure to try and give you documents by 21 days, but it's a huge challenge to do that. So please bear that in mind. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Richard. That was the bulk of our work, try to adjust that in order not to overload everyone plan, including the Secretariat preparatory work, actually, which is part of this assessment of whether or not it's possible to do everything during next year. We did have in mind also the decision that could be taken here about the BIM, which will be in addition, obviously, to everything else which is clearly specified in this work plan. So now the floor is now open for comment. I see Jan, Mo, and Adao, and Nona. So Jan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for presenting this paper, which I think is very important to have that planning. And as Richard said, there's many things we need to do, and there's as much time as is available. So it's important to plan carefully, and obviously taking into account what we will have been able to agree by the end of tomorrow, and going from tomorrow to the next board meeting, which may seem a long time, 6 months, but in the end we know that there's a few things on the way, like the COP. So it will be very important to complement this work plan with where we land tomorrow evening, and maybe pave concretely the next steps. A kind of timetable that will give us, that will get us to B8. And I know that this plan is going board meeting by board meeting, but there is a little more granularity needed so that we are comfortable that we can deliver on what we want to do, especially on implementing the BIM and launching the first call for proposals, and making sure that when we actually receive the proposals, that we have all the elements in place that we can assess them. So that's important, and that speaks. I see there's a few placeholders. I would add to the placeholder also the policy of ethics and conflicts of interest to revisit if there's any other elements which we still need to do depending on what we decide, so that we can decide with full we can decide on the received proposals with full recognition of full elements of our ability to take the decision. So what is there good needs to be updated, but also we need more granular planning, and I think we will also discuss it when we discuss the Secretariat work plan and the ambition for the performance of the Executive Director, because obviously this is very much work in between the board and the Secretariat, taking into account that there will be the changing of guards in the board as well, in the co-chairs, and a very good transition between the co-chairs is an important element for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, not sure to understand about the policy of ethics. You want to add that? Is it already in, and you want to?
No, it is now written for 2027, but I think we need a checkpoint vis-à-vis what we agree, whether there's any elements that we need to add to the package that we will need to consider at B8, so that we can do the consideration of all the projects depending on the scope.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. Mo, you are the next.
Thank you so much, co-chairs, and thank you for presenting this. I have a couple of questions and seeking clarification, and also elements to be added. The first one, I thought that we have a continuity in our work. So we had a work plan 1, and this is work plan 2. And I don't see a comparison or something that links between work plan 1 and work plan 2, including on the structure of the work plan itself. So if you look at the work plan 1, the structure of it, the headings, subheadings, and so on, are totally different than, or almost totally different than what we have now. So it's very difficult to compare on what was delivered, what was not delivered, what is missing. The second point, the first work plan was for 2 years, then now we are shifting to 1-year work plan. I don't know if the fund will be working on a shorter term work plan, and this I don't think would be the best option. It is, in the first 2 years would allow for bigger planning because we have a lot of mandates. I understand that the BIM has kicked in and BIM is something that we have to consider. But also it is important that we have a longer vision with shorter delivery processes. So I think this is another element that is important from our point of view to be considered. And again, those are two clarifications that I would like to hear, why we don't have a comparison between the first work plan and two, why are we working on 1 year approach. The third element is, I think here in this work plan, the issue of triggers is included within results measurement, which I do not think that it should be bundled with the results management framework. It is a separate element. It is not part of the results. Triggers are pre, not post, so I think this is important. I understand that in the transition phase, we're not going to apply the triggers, but it is not part of the results. It is part of the policies and the application and the access part. So I think it should not be included under the results management, but I would like to hear from the Secretariat why they have that. Being part of the rules of procedure, there were additional rules of procedure that were to be further considered. I don't see them in this work plan also. So I don't know if they will be included or not.
Which one?
On the additional rules of procedures, there were hanging issues from the rules of procedure that we have presented, and I think, well, I have one member of maybe I'm wrong, but I have another member of the committee. I think we have paragraph 17 of the rules of procedure and then paragraph 18 of the governance. So, I mean, there are several elements we can discuss, but I think there was still some elements that needed further work, and I think it was not also included. So those are my 2 questions and 2 comments for you, and thank you so much for the document.
Yes, thank you, Mo. On your first question, yeah, I think that probably due to the lack of time, actually, just that we did it very recently and the idea was just to update, not to revamp completely that. Still, the initial work plan was done by the interim secretariat under our guidance, but probably some vague guidance at this initial time. And then we just made a few modifications of organization which seemed more fit with the substance of these different elements. We didn't intend to change everything at all, but we really did a few adjustments to make it more consistent with what is being discussed in these elements. I take your point. Maybe I didn't understand very well your point about moving an element on the. So maybe you have more feedback on that. And the last point, I mean, I'm not able to answer that, so I will turn to Richard.
Okay, so on the last point on the rules of procedure, another caution to colleagues is that this work plan doesn't account for any of the agenda items on this board meeting. So assuming that we adopt or open the agenda items on our agenda here, whatever comes out of that conversation would then be added into another update to the work plan, right? So there is an agenda item for co-chairs to report on matters related to decision making, which is the mandates that you referred to that are outstanding. And we will report to you where the status of that work is. And so assumption is that that would then be included in the future work program, but ultimately the other component of the complexity of this is that JC and I, we end our term on the 31st of December. So new co-chairs would come in, and this is the guide for those new co-chairs to understand what's on the table, right? It will be up to those new co-chairs to decide how they can process with those 2 matters on decision making and when they're able to bring them to the board, because those mandates are mandated to be in consultation with the board. So let us report back on that, and then we'll reflect in an update. On the matter of the triggers, we can go back to the Secretariat and come back to you on whether and where it can be included in the plan as part of the long-term model discussion. So just give us that time so that we don't overburden the Secretariat with a mandate that may or may not be possible to deliver. We just can't answer that right now.
And 2 years versus 1 year, so just to be aware of.
Yeah, well, Richard alluded to that. Well, I mean, it seems to us a little bit odd to do the job for our colleagues. So that will be part of the transition. I mean, hopefully we will be able to meet the four of us, maybe virtually, when they will take over, and we will put the issue before them, actually, rather than decide for them on that. That was the idea. But thank you for your proposal. Probably we will have to reflect a little bit on it. I don't master everything, and neither Richard, so we will have to come back probably later to the board. So let's get your inputs this morning. We'll adjust everything which has to be adjusted, and we'll come back to you. So next on my list is Adao, followed by Nona, Anna, Johan. That's it for the time being. So Adao, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe, and good morning, colleagues. I have 2 points to be raised. First one is the issue that I always say that we need to have some difference between this fund and others. So rapid disbursement is one of the key issues that we need to consider, and it's still missing in this document, but thank you very much for providing us the work plan. So we do feel that we need to see the work on the developing a rapid disbursement cycle to be reflected in this document. And we do see that this work should continue to be ongoing in parallel with the funding program and also project cycle. That will be really, really good. And this will be also part of the task that you have already provided. So it should be added as another task, and the operationalization of the fund, I think that will be good. And we could develop the modalities for this, and then we could adopt this issue at our next meeting, B10, it's possible. So we need to start to put this as part of our agenda or work plan so we can discuss further. And my second point is resource mobilization issues that you have already put in place. And you take, we, the document takes the reference of para 56 of the GI itself. And para 56 also capturing issues of long-term fundraising issues, and we need to start now, not until the next year or 2028, 2028. It will be very, very late. So what we propose would be having some real actions on this issue, especially at COP30. We need to have something. So we need to also put something here as part of resource mobilization strategy. I do believe that the different small group discussions have been taking place, but we propose to have this element in place as well. Long-term fundraising issue, strategy or issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On your first point, I note in the work plan that we will have to discuss at B10 and adopt the program and project cycle for the long-term operations of the FRLD. So it seems that your issue will have to be discussed here, the rapid disbursement system. So I think it's already included in that. I mean, that's part of the long-term operations of the FRLD to me. But we can be a little bit more specific on that. On your second point, RMS, I mean, that will be discussed later on. Richard, you want to comment on this one?
I wanted to comment on the rapid disbursement. So can we just be very clear with each other here that rapid disbursement is a principle that should be applied to all the work of the Secretariat. So it's not as if there's an agenda item on rapid disbursement unless we get to a point where we feel as if the Secretariat is not rapidly dispersing, right? Which we don't, that's not the case right now. So I would ask maybe the way to deal with it is that we consider KPIs. So it's dealt with in work that Elena and Gerard are doing in terms of the post-approval process. And Abdul Rahman raised the question in the informal around the time frame that the Secretariat needs to, the process of the trustee would need to take in terms of clarifying the legal agreement, which I don't believe we have an answer for you yet. Abdul Rahman will speak to Bernard. So that rapid disbursement is part of the timely conclusion of the legal agreements post-approval of the board, and then whatever subsequent actions the Secretariat will take. So it's very much an operational principle, and maybe it can be captured in the work that Elena and Gerard are doing for the BIM, although I think it's at this stage quite difficult to suggest how long rapid would actually be, and it may be something that the board reflects on in its conversations at each board meeting where we discuss the BIM funding. So if we approve BIM funding in B9, we would be able to at B10 understand how rapid the disbursements of that has been. And then only at that stage would I think we'd be able to give guidance to the Secretariat on realistic KPIs on how that process should work. But I want to give you assurances, Ambassador, that at least for these co-chairs, any kind of disbursement in principle is rapid, and that's what the achievement is, and I believe the Secretariat has the same understanding. So I'm not quite sure, so I'm telling you now that we're dealing with it in every place that we have something to do with the approval, the post-approval process. So I give you that guarantee that it is being addressed. As Jean-Christophe said, when we get to the long-term model and that project cycle, we'll be able to draw lessons from the BIM on exactly how long this process is taking us, and either then that's satisfactory in terms of the time the trustee is taking to conclude legal agreements, and then the time that it takes for the Secretariat or the trustee to disperse the money. Sorry, let's be clear. It's the trustee that would be dispersing, so it's not really a Secretariat KPI, it's a trustee KPI. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, hello.
Thank you very much, and but my apology for coming back. I do feel, or we do feel, that this rapid disbursement is not principle. This is access issue. Para 49 of the GI is very clear. This is part of para 49. 49 is about access. And this is 49E. So that's why we need to have separate cycle around this issue in the document. And I believe that this is also part of long-term discussion, but we need to adopt something else at B10, not to starting discussing this by B10. It will be very, very late. I'm so sorry for this, but this is the key principle, not really key principle, but this is modality to access. If you read again, the paragraph 49 is very clear, modality, it's part of modality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ada. On your second point of resource mobilization strategy, I don't want to talk on behalf of the facilitator of the group dealing with that yesterday, but I think we are pretty much online for the idea that we have to start right now the work. So that's what the decision should be clear about. But that's not, that's not the discussion that we're going to have here. We are going to have it during the discussion on resource mobilization strategy. Next on my list is Nona, followed by Johan, Natasha, Antonella, Djibril, and Antonella. Anna, I miss you. Nona, Anna, you are just after Nona. Yeah. Nona, Anna, Johan, Natasha, Djibril, and Antonella. Okay, Ahmed, you are before, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I will squeeze you before Natasha and Djibril. Okay. Next, Nona, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the Secretariat and co-chairs for their hard work in preparation of the draft documents. Also, I would like to thank the Government of Philippines for great hospitality. Dear co-chairs, allow me to first express appreciation for your clear guidance in preparing the work plan as well as ensuring continuity between the 2024-2025 work plan and the upcoming one for 2026. The proposed work plan demonstrates strong commitment through strategic continuation, operational readiness and institutional coherence. It provides structured roadmap toward the full operation of the fund by 2027. I particularly welcome the provision that the work plan will be updated on rolling basis to reflect new mandates agreed by the board, and co-chairs will be update the work plan after the board meetings to integrate relevant decisions, deliverables, and timelines. Such approach is essential for dynamic fund, which must remain responsive to evolving needs, policy developments, and operational lessons. It will also enhance accountability and transparency by ensuring that progress is visible to all stakeholders over the course of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nona. Anna, you are next.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this document. In general, I think we're okay with it. On the kind of timeline, I think the only practical change we would request is in line with what Jan was saying already, is to consider the policy of ethics and conflict of interest, or at least some elements of it earlier than in 2027, because there are some elements of that policy which we think may need to be in place before we actually decide on projects. I would also very strongly support Mo in this request for a kind of 2-year work plan. It would be useful to get a kind of more specific outlook also for 2027, maybe even beyond that, because this is not prejudging the work of the future co-chairs, but there are some mandates which we have set as the board. We've already set some mandates to do something by B11 or B12 or at B13. So it would be really useful just to put those things in as a kind of reminder of the board, the timeline that the board has agreed, and I would agree there with Nona that it would be useful once we make decisions where we kind of set a mandate to deal with something by a specific board meeting, then you could automatically update that into the kind of document, and then of course then the co-chair's work will build on this. Just to say, we did this exercise ourselves by using a bit of a ChatGPT and the decisions that had been made, and it actually led to quite a nice table to read. And then finally, we think it's really also very important to consider intersessional work, because to us the board has more than the 9 days a year. I mean, we're here permanently. We only meet physically 3 times, but our way of working should also be innovative, and it should really reflect the urgency of the need. So where we're sitting from, we are really flexible. We stand as board members to work between meetings, and it's not something that we expect to be reflected in this work plan, but when we think about kind of preparing for the next board meeting, we really should think about the intersessional work as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Precisely, there is a column in the table which is Outlook to 2027. I mean, why didn't we do a more specific allocation of work to board meetings? Well, two reasons. One, first is that my sense is that we are not going to do the work plan for 2026 as it is, actually. There is no way that you are going to deliver on that. So that will be delayed. Now, how to organize 2027? That's none of my business. I mean, I won't be co-chair, and I think that the two next co-chair will have to take on this responsibility to assess the good functioning of this work. So, I mean, I can use ChatGPT. Yeah, I would love to be replaced by a robot to do my job. Not sure it's a good possibility, but I mean, it will be really doing things by chance. So I'm not sure it's very helpful to you. I mean, we have to do some thinking about that when you co-chair the board in order to organize the work of the board. I am not sure we are able today to give you more information than what is in this last column, Outlook to 2027 deliverable. I would agree with you and Mo that it would be great to have that capacity of anticipating work by the board. I will probably do mistake, and yeah, I mean, and not, I won't be very trustworthy if I did that. So my sense is that we can try. That will be more something to please you, Anna, and others around this table, not necessarily add some more information to you. I mean, because all what you ask is on this last column, actually. Maybe we missed something, so please be specific on what we could add on this last column, to be more specific on when these elements could be discussed, when the Secretariat will have time to develop these elements for the board, the consideration. That I don't know. That I have to recognize my lack of capacity to do much more than that. Johan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. While we recognize all efforts that have been dedicated to the elaboration of this work plan, and while we fully understand the capacity constraints of this fund, we would like to re-emphasize a request that many of us have previously made in this board, which is to have documents circulated in a timely manner before board meetings. This is not only a good practice, but could also allow us to have more time for internal consultations in capital, for duly coordinating among ourselves, among the countries represented in the seat, and ultimately for being able to contribute in a more informed manner to the important decisions that the board will have to take next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. I thought I had been clear at B6 that in no way you will get the documents on time for this board meeting. So I completely agree with you that it's a pity, but with, if I count, well, something like 2.5 months, 3 months, including the summertime and vacation for Secretariat staff and for myself, by the way, and Richard, we had really no time to prepare documentation on time. So it's unfortunate, and it's not good governance, I would agree with you, but this is under this timeline that we decided to work at B6. I suggested to postpone B7, which and we probably missed something like 3 weeks, 4 weeks to be really ready and comfortable for organizing this meeting. So I am sorry to have to put you in this context, and I think it's not comfortable at all. We'll try to make sure that the documentation that will be put forward the board are good enough for consideration and potentially for adoption, but we couldn't do better than that this time. I do think that next time that's a real possibility that at last this board gets the documentation on time. We have 5 to 6 months between B7 and B8. That's great. This is the first time this board will have the opportunity to have this period between two board meetings. So I think we should try, but that's not necessarily my job, but those of the next co-chair, to give you documentation in time. And I would love to be able to see that, actually, because that will be the first time we had the opportunity to work correctly with this documentation issue. So recognize that. Unfortunately, we have not been able to do it this time again. Next time, maybe, I mean, there is a good chance that you will be better serviced than this time. Next on my list is Natasha.
Thank you. Since this is my first time taking the floor at the 7th board meeting, I would like to express my gratitude to the government of the Philippines for hosting us and for their exceptional hospitality. Regarding the work plan, we appreciate that it outlines deliverables and timelines that clearly articulate the various dimensions of our work, including the long-term operationalization. However, it is evident that the timelines may need to be adjusted depending on the progress we make. Therefore, it is crucial that the board's work plan remains flexible and does not preempt elements that will emerge from decisions on the BIM operationalization and the resource mobilization strategy. We would propose that the dates and venues for 27 would be agreed upon, ideally already at B9, to enable all of us to plan our travel arrangements well in advance. Regarding the review of the BIM, initial results or findings could be presented earlier than 2027 to enable timely adjustments if necessary. Additionally, many decisions related to the operationalization of the fund are scheduled for B10, which risks overloading that meeting and even causing further delays. If feasible, some of the issues could be addressed in earlier meetings to distribute the workload more evenly. We are also open and supportive to establishing more intersessional work in order to secure sufficient progress, although we agree that it does not necessarily have to be part of the work plan. We also believe that the one-year work plan as presented is particularly appropriate for 2027, so for the next year. It ensures that we have a clear understanding of the critical steps required for the important decisions the board needs to make that year. Additionally, many activities planned for 2028 will depend a lot on the progress we achieve in 2027. That said, we remain open to discussing a return to a 2-year work plan in the future, for future years. Additionally, we believe that it is important to avoid overloading individual board meetings to ensure substantive and well-considered decision-making, particularly on matters with long-term implications. I understand that this is already a priority for the co-chairs and the Secretariat, and I thank you for your attention in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Maybe I missed a couple of points, so if you can send us the proposal you make on rearranging that, since we are going to go through some other proposal, that would be good. On B10, yes, As I said, I have my doubts on the capacity of the board to deliver on this program for 2026. I think B8 and B9 will be very much loaded on beam issues, following the decision that could be taken at this board meeting. So not sure it's appropriate to move forward some of the items for B10. But we can look at it again and considering also your other proposal. Next is Ahmed Abdulrahman.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Colleagues, as this is my first time taking the floor in this meeting, allow me to take a moment to express our gratitude to the government and people of the Republic of the Philippines for their warm hospitality and continued commitment in hosting us once again here in Manila. We meet at a time that reminds us of the very purpose of the fund. The recent earthquake in the Philippines has underscored the urgency of turning our decisions into tangible support for communities living the realities of loss and damage. On behalf of the United Arab Emirates, I extend our deepest solidarity with the government and the people of the Philippines and appreciation for their resilience. The UAE responded swiftly through its national aid agency in coordination with the Philippine authorities, providing emergency supplies and early recovery support. Colleagues, the UAE attaches high importance to ensuring that the FRLD is fully operational, efficient, and delivering impact on the ground by COP30 Belém. In that spirit, we support the adoption of the Secretariat 2026 work plan and administrative budget. I wish to specifically recognize the unique characteristics of this fund, a mechanism designed to respond swiftly, equitably, and with purpose. The work plan, therefore, must be ambitious in light of the urgency, responsive to the needs, and realistic given the existing capacity. I'd like to emphasize 3 key points. First, expenditure must clearly prioritize delivery under the Barbados implementation modalities, not administrative overhand. Second, the Secretariat must accelerate recruitment and strengthen its technical capacity. The board can only be effective if it is matched by Secretariat that is fully capacitated, agile, and accountable. Third, we encourage the introduction of quarterly operational performance report covering staffing review timelines and project processing indicators to enhance transparency and allow the board to monitor readiness in real time. As we look ahead to the fund's resource mobilization and replenishment process, it will be equally important that all approaches remain voluntary, predictable, and guided by the fund's governing instruments. The UAE stands ready to continue working constructively with the co-chairs, Secretariat, and all board members to ensure that this fund moves decisively from design to delivery and fulfill the expectations of those it was created to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Next is Jibril.
Okay, thank you, Co-Chair. Really, I like this process for many reasons. Firstly, I learned a lot from this process. And secondly, is to notice that there is a real understanding we have to understand each other. I want to come back now in the content of my statements to say my deep understanding of BEAM. BEAM is a pilot phase. In order to take advantage from this pilot phase, to improve what we have to do with JAI. And for me, it is clear. The rapid disbursement is a modality to access funds. I want to say support strongly what Ambassador Adao said. Yesterday, I worked in this working group, very well shared by Elena and Gerard here. I raised twice of this issue of LDC. I went to see the reports, and I'm very surprised of the response provided by Richard. No. You have your understanding of this process. I have my own understanding. I look at very well the paragraph 49 of Decision 1CP5. It's clear. The board will develop various modalities to facilitate access to the fund resources. These modalities may include A, B, until E, until rapid disbursement modalities as appropriate. So for us, modality is as a package. We will address each part of these modalities and take lessons from there to improve what we have to improve for the long-term process. It is my understanding. So in this work plan, we have to take into account this modality also. It's not an issue of principle or what, no. It is a real concern for ADC. And please, if you want to see this work plan to be adopted, try to deal with this issue of rapid disbursement. For us, it's very key. We are there, of course, we have many interests, but what we have to do mainly is to implement the JAI, the decision which has been taken. It's what we are doing here. It's what we are doing here. So please, in this work plan, as ADC, I want to see rapid disbursement before adopting this work plan. I don't know how we will do, but we will continue to discuss. And for me, I know when we start the process, it's difficult, firstly, but at the end of the day, we understand each other, and we take the best decision for each other. If you take a decision which is against of one part interest, this decision is not applicable. It's why I call you, I pay you to address this issue of rapid disbursement in this work plan. For us, it's key. Why you want to wait until B10? Why? I don't understand for me. I don't understand. I will stop here. And really, I want to see the reporter of Gerard and Elena, because I read this issue yesterday in our working group, and I want to see the reports. So be aware, we read this issue since yesterday, and we will continue to raise it today, maybe until tomorrow. Be sure I will do like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jibril. So as I said to Adao, we have on the work plan at B10, the adoption. So Adao insisted that discussion should start before B10 to adopt that. So we can move some part of the discussion at B9. I would be careful not to overload B8. B8 will be a big meeting with a lot of elements to make B49, 49A Part 1 operational and complement all the aspects of the other access modalities. But B9, I mean, why not trying to move forward some element of discussion in order to be sure that at B10 the board could be in a position to adopt the long-term operational program and project cycle for the FRLD. That could be a possibility. And coming back to Mo and Anna's point, I realized that we have put the adoption of work plan for 2027 and B10. Maybe we can move forward some indicative work plan for 2027 at B8 in order for the board to have a view of 2026 and 2027 at B8. Even though I again think that even at B8 it will be challenging to have a pretty good view, but we can try to do that. Yeah. Next on my list is Antonella.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you to the Secretariat also for preparing this draft work plan. As it is the first time I take the floor, I would like in this board, I would like to join other colleagues in warmly thanking the government and the people of Philippines for graciously hosting this important meeting of the board. This is a board meeting that represent a key milestone for the effective start of the fund's operation, and the decision we take here will shape the fund ability to deliver on its mandate in coming months and in coming years. So I also wish to sincerely thank our co-chair for their leadership and hard work in preparing this session and for guiding us through this critical phase of the fund operationalization, and as well as I wish to thank the Secretariat for their continued effort and for the comprehensive documentation that support our work. So coming back to this work plan, I also wish to, I welcome, the clarification from Richard and from you, co-chairs, that the work plan will be updated to reflect the decision taken at this meeting. And I appreciate also the inclusion of the placeholders in anticipation of those developments. And in this regard, I would like, in any case, to highlight the importance of ensuring that the upcoming updates fully capture the implication of the decision we are working on, particularly those related to the funding cycle, funding criteria, and access modalities, which are essential for the full operationalization of the Barbados implementation modalities. And these include, for example, the operationalization of the direct access through national government via direct budget support, paragraph 49A, part 1, because the implementation of this modality may require clarification on important institutional arrangements, such as the composition and oversight of external team, tasked with assessment of functional equivalences, and the role and responsibility of the Secretariat and the board in this process. So, furthermore, I support the proposal already put forward by some board members, including Mo and Anne, to adopt a biannual work plan that, as rightly proposed, will be updated on a rolling basis to remain flexible and responsive to new development. And finally, I would appreciate a clarification on expected timing and process for the adoption of the updated work plan, whether this is foreseen to happen intersessionally or at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Antonella. As to your question, in the current work plan, the work plan for 2027 is, you mean this work plan? So my intention is to gather the comments and suggestions to suspend the session and to come back later on, probably tomorrow, to put the work plan for adoption by the board.
Thank you.
Okay. And so if you have more comments, yeah. Antonella, yeah. next speaker, Elena, and you seem to have understood better than I did the proposal about additional rules of procedures. We may have missed some complement to be added. So as you have been instrumental in designing these rules of procedure, maybe you can clarify that for me. Sorry, Mo, not catching everything.
Yeah, thank you, JC. I will try to remember what those were. But yeah, so I think I'll come to that in when I say JC. But I think I just want to echo comments from board members of the importance of the board having at least a 2-year work plan. And I think that this, I know the two of you have a term limit, but I think it's a work plan of the board, irrespective of who the co-chairs are, right? It's indicative of what the workload will be for incoming co-chairs. But more than that, I think it's having a long-term or at least a short-term to mid-term work plan gives more of an indication of what the board needs to do. And that also then reflects in what the Secretariat then has to plan to do to deliver on, to support the board to deliver on all of that, right? So I understand, JC, that, for example, you gave the example of we had very limited time to come up with papers between B6 and B7, but having a work plan that does effectively have or at least tasks in the long term, we can better prepare, or the Secretariat can better prepare in the long term to having these papers ready in the long term, right? Not working board meeting to board meeting. It helps with also with the governance and having at least a 2-year work plan. So just to add to that. Now, with what I think that is missing and might be important to include is, I think and I've mentioned this in previous meetings, that there's the element of triggers that we have to at least have that conversation and what that represents in the long-term operation of the fund. And we have to somehow reflect that in a different part of, within 2026 or 2027 and how that relates to the long term, right? And I think that there will be lessons learned from the BIM that can inform that discussion at some point. Now, with respect to what I've been hearing on Ambassador Dow and Jibril's comments on rapid disbursement, I think that this is a conversation that we'll be having in our group as well as to how that relates to what is currently possible within the BIM, but then how the BIM can then inform the long-term operation of the fund and how rapid disbursement can become more of an operationalized as a modality that Ambassador Dow alludes to. But I think that there are different elements that have to happen in order for that as an access modality to be explored by the board and how can it be operationalized. And it does come with the conversation on triggers, and it does come with a conversation that now will then lead me to rules of procedure. Richard, so there was a task pending from rules of procedure is how do we develop the modalities or the procedures for decisions between board meetings? That is also an element that if the board is going to elaborate on access rapid disbursement as an access modality, that comes with that. And there's a discussion we had at the committee level last year that we removed at the end because it was very explicit as to what happens if we need a decision between X amount of days or X amount of days. There were ranges that then we removed out of that from the rules of procedure because we felt that these were then had to be further elaborated in the long term, for the long-term operation of the fund. So that was one of the things that was left pending from rules of procedure. So co-chairs in consultation with the board, how do we elaborate the procedures for decisions between board meetings? And the other was, Ambassador Moore alluded to, is how we operational, what is the practice around the paragraph 17 of the rules of procedure is another thing. But these are elements that I think that in different parts that have to happen so that Ambassador Dow, if he's suggesting to include in the work plan by B10 how to operationalize the access modalities, these are other things that have to happen in parallel, right? So how does the BIM project cycle give lessons as to how that can be operationalized by B10? And then these other parts of conversations that also have to happen so that a board can then make an informed decision as to how do we, operationalize access, rapid disbursement as an access modality. So just elements that I think are in the full scope of the picture that the board has to start to have conversations around between 2026, 2027, right?
Thank you, Elena. I will just answer the point on 2027, and then turn to Richard, who seems to have strong views on the additional rules of procedures. Elena, on 2027, you have a column with what should be delivered on 2027. What we don't have, and we didn't think we have the capacity to do, is to locate every one of these elements in a specific board meeting. But we try to summarize in this column all what has to be done in 2027. So the question first is whether we missed something that we should add. So this is a question for the board. And this column has to be correct. So we try to do our best to make it correct, but there could be something missing. So please mention that. This is our understanding of what has to be done in 2027. Obviously, out of what would be decided at B8, B9, B10, which I don't know at all. That's my first remark. Would you like to add things to that? That's your choice, actually. But this is what we think has to be done as far as the co-chair are concerned. Second, so inability to locate that more clearly, but as I say, we can try to do it at B8 to give the board visibility over 2 years. That would be quite a little bit more easier at B8, not necessarily easy, but more easier. Third, I do think that we have a lot in our plate for 2026. The BIM delivery, if we decide on it during this board meeting, would be very, very heavy to digest next year. Obviously, that's not all we have to do. So as you see, there are a lot more in addition to that. My sense, again, is that that's not possible to deliver on everything. So we have also to make a reality check here. And I would really encourage all the board members to do this reality check, whether or not we're able to deliver on all of that, first, before thinking about what we're going to do in 2027, 28, and later on, and deliver properly. That's a reality check that you have to do. And in addition to that, we have this uncertainty on what will be the modalities of the BIM. And obviously, depending on these modalities, the plan for 2026 will be a bit different. What we have in mind, is not necessarily what the board is going to decide. There is this uncertainty. The placeholder will obviously fill out very, very, very heavily the work plan for 2026 as well. So reality check on what we can do. Then obviously visibility is key for me. So we can move forward the clarity on how 2027 will be organized. But again, that is more of the work of the next co-chair than ours. And third, be careful about how BIM, how much time and probably resources BIM will take from the board, but also from the secretariat to deliver everything we hopefully are going to decide during this board meeting. Now, Richard, you want to add elements on the BIM, the BBM?
Yeah, so just two things. It's we're no problem with this 2-year work program thing, but I think it's too early, right? So in the GCF, we went to a 4-year work program because the long-term model was clarified, and because in that process, you adopt a policy on something and then you review it every 3 years. So we were able to then, in that 4-year work program, clarify when the policy cycle happens. So in that sense, that would be the ideal, but it's too early now for that. But again, we can, as Jean-Christophe said, we can attempt to amend things accordingly. On the rules of procedure issue, so in our assessment, there is already a procedure for taking decisions without a board meeting, and it's being used. The remaining issue was co-chairs consultations, and particularly other instances when it can be used, particularly for funding proposals. If the board wants to resolve this, we are happy to bring you a proposal tomorrow when we have the agenda item to confirm that the board is happy to take decisions on funding proposals without a board meeting, right? Because I sense that's where we want to go to. Or you can ask the future co-chairs to have the same conversation, which will probably end up leading to that outcome. Or you can just adopt it right now if you want. If you give us guidance, we'll prepare a decision to confirm that in accordance with this decision from B4, it was, I think, or B5, the board is happy to have funding decisions taken on the basis of a decision without a board meeting, right? And we can do that. We haven't had the time to consult board members, but if the overarching sense is we need to do that, then there's no point for consultation. We can take a decision tomorrow, just if that's what you wish. If it's not what you wish, then the mandate for future co-chairs to consult the board remains. So I just wanted to say that and offer a solution if you wish it to be that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. But I mean, the alternative is, I suggested to locate that in the work plan during 2026, actually. So that's a possibility. And thank you, Elena, for pointing out these elements that we decided on earlier on, and that could be missing, and which are missing for this work plan. We will make proposal on that. Next speaker is José.
Thanks, JC. I'll be brief and I'm going to repeat what others have said. It might not come as a surprise, but I would like to underline the importance of proper management of commitment authority. We had the discussion yesterday on our bilateral conversations on the resource mobilization strategy. I think it's part of our obligation as boards to from day one actually to tackle this matter. So I would, in a nutshell, suggest tasking the Secretariat in consultation with the BC to make recommendations on how to properly manage commitment authority in the future. This is an element that will be of benefit to many of the elements included in this work plan. So I do think it's an absolute necessity. A second point that I'm kind of missing is policy for contributions that are also a necessary step ahead of any kind of replenishment. It's not here. Just since we have received a visual aid on the timeline of the replenishment and the steps ahead of that, I don't want us to miss that very important point, just flagging this as part of good governance.
Thank you, José. On your first point, well, I do agree with you that it's important for this board to be on the top of this issue of commitment authority. I understand that's been discussed extensively yesterday during one of the facilitating group. Maybe it's better to get that out of the discussion on resource mobilization. So, I do think it's important. I think Richard shares my views on that. So if the board agrees, we can, when we come back on this item of board work plan, we can prepare a decision for the board to do exactly what you suggest, which is, I think, a good element of an element of good governance for this board to be able to master this concept of commitment authority. So if there is no objection, we will try on that when we come back to have this decision. Next is Kirsty. Yes, and on your other point on the policy for contribution, this is clearly part of all the work program on resource mobilization. So we have not yet decided on that. So and there is some element already on the resource mobilization that obviously could be added if and when we take a decision on resource mobilization. You're right to say this is completely part of a replenishment process. We have not agreed yet about that. So yeah, that's something that we have to consider at one point. Yeah. Next is Kirsty, followed by Gérard.
Thanks very much, JC. And given this is the first time I've spoken at this board meeting, I too would like to thank the government of the Philippines for graciously hosting the FRLD and this board meeting this time round. I have 3 points to make. My first point is to align with those suggesting we schedule intersessional work into the work plan, given the volume of complex decisions to be taken over the next year, particularly in the lead up to B8. I agree with what Anna has said in terms of, as much as we only meet for 9 days, we can actually do some work out of session as well. And I think given, some of the really heavy schedules that we've got coming up over, particularly in the lead up to B8 and B10, that could be really helpful. My second point is just around the placeholders on BIM implementation that are currently in the work plan. They will obviously be key and potentially drive the work that the board needs to do in 2026. We also suggest that there be a placeholder for reflections for learnings from BIM to be incorporated into the work plan at the appropriate time. That may well be in 2027, but sort of having a placeholder for that kind of idea as well could be useful. My third point is just part of the reality check that JC has urged us to do. We really question if we've got the correct sequencing of timing to adopt the program and project cycle for the long-term operation of the FRLD. In the draft work plan, that is scheduled at B10. My key question, my key concern, I think, is really that the safeguards and fiduciary principles and standards are only being considered at B10 and then adopted in 2027. And other important policies will not be bedded down by B10, which also seem quite key to long-term implementation. Further, we think early implementation of, obviously by B10, we will only be in the early implementation phases of the BIM and have no reflection, no learnings to reflect into the long-term operation of the FRLD. As this is only my second board meeting, it may well be that this decision to consider the long-term operation in B10 was decided in a previous board meeting, but I do wonder if now is the appropriate time to rethink the sequencing of all of those issues and perhaps reconsider that timing. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Kirsty. On intersessional work that you mentioned, and Anna mentioned that as well. I mean, that's something I would encourage the board to consider every time we take a decision in order to use efficiently the time between the board meeting and the target board meeting where this is to be considered. It's not practicable to do it in this work plan. So again, it has to be really considered every time we take a decision, and we think that some intersessional work should be necessary. And I would completely agree that is going to be the case between this board meeting and the next board meeting. On the timing, on the fiduciary and standards, we have not decided to set any fiduciary and standards. So it's more a reflection on probably functional equivalency than anything else that is proposed here. And certainly not a policy setting that is put in this work plan. Still, we may have another look on the sequencing of that, and again maybe as I answered to Djibril and Adao. Starting a discussion at B9 on the long term could be nice and efficient in order to figure out what other discussions should be taking place before being able to adopt a long-term project program and project cycle, and then check that other elements which have been postponed to 2027 are not useful. We try to do that, but if you identify the elements, be glad that you mentioned that to me before we come up with another version of this work plan. Yeah, and I missed probably your last point. What was it? Sorry.
No, I think you got everything, JC.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, Richard, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 points. So I think I'm not sure we're doing the transition from the BIM model to the long-term model correctly, right? So assuming we take a decision now and next year on the replenishment process and the time frame, that will be in 2027. It's my understanding that all the long-term policy work would have to be concluded before that replenishment starts. So therefore, it is in the right space if we're going to do that in sometime 2027. But maybe the better way is for us to actually reflect and present a separate work plan or separate section on an updated work plan between now and the end of the year, and exactly how we're going to sequence the work that needs to be done for the long-term model, so colleagues have a better sense of that, because we are essentially adding a massive workload that in a very short time in order to do what we need to do in 2027. Let me just comment on, I don't understand what you mean by intersessional work, right? And I really don't want us to go back on our discussions that we held from B1 to B4 around whether we were having virtual meetings or whatever sessions, and I'm not saying that you were suggesting that at all, but we've had this conversation and we have concluded then again for developing countries that doesn't work, right? And so the practice even to date, when we ask for consultations and when we have consultation meetings, the participation of developing countries is mixed because of many constraints, including time. So while I'm not opposed to at all having a working modality that we consult and we share and ask views, we just need to consider that it's not really universal and full participation of board members. So it doesn't replace the fact that the most sort of universal participatory inclusive process for developing countries is at the board meeting, which is why it is 9 days of work, because that's where we consider and adopt decisions. We won't consider and adopt decisions outside of it unless it applies to the agreed decisions on how to take decisions without a board meeting, which we understand as being highly as extraordinary matters rather than substantive matters that may take deliberation. So I just want to be clear that no problem with the working in between the 9 days, but under the context of what we've already agreed upon. So I just want to be clear on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I remember now your point about have a moment to reflect on the BIM and the lessons learned. So it is already put on the agenda for 2027. A review of the BIM, initial result, including key finding, lesson learned, challenges. So it has to be located in 2027, obviously, but it is already put on the agenda for 2027, which seems to me the moment to have that. Would be odd to have it earlier than that. Next speaker is Gérard.
Thank you, JC. Your last point, actually, Kirsty, just made me think about, and Richard, you mentioned this, the transition. So it's worth, I think, recognizing that this board will go through quite a significant transition between Board 7 and Board 8, not only to co-chairs, but lots of people through the rotation, leaving the board that are deeply immersed in the GI and the reasons why the GI is there and can recall of those issues. I think there's two elements to that. I mean, one of them is it's hugely important that new people coming onto the board are able to access information and understand the decisions that have been made in the past and where they come from. So I think there is a premium, in a sense, on board induction. Otherwise, the long existing member of the boards will be forever inducting, and we'll get into quite a transactional process. I think that's number one. Number two, I would strongly support an idea that the new co-chairs could consider some sort of half-day board retreat at Board 8 to consolidate that new board and to talk about what it means to be a board, right? A board that is based on trust and equity, Richard, as you were just pointing out. But I think that would really help in building that movement forward. So I just wanted to put those ideas on the table. In terms of the work plan, I mean, it's an obvious point, but what we're talking about here is prioritization. So in a sense, we're trying to work out what it is we need to prioritize and what we need to sequence. And Richard, I was going to actually make the point that you did in terms of the long-term operational model. I think it would be really good to come back to it after this discussion, after we see what the decisions we've landed on the BIM, and to see a proposal for how that works through, because it feels really important, not only in responding to Ambassador Adao and Jibril's points about how we conform to the instructions we already have, to build all those elements in. So I would recommend that. And I think that what you presented is good, and we should heed your advice on being realistic about what we could achieve really, really closely. So I just wanted to reinforce that point. I did also want to support the idea of intercessional, and I agree with you, Richard, it needs to be properly equitable in its conduct. But I don't think that should stop us. And I'd really like to see us adopting agreement to take decisions between board meetings, if you like, on an exceptional basis, but it's something we should be prepared to do, because I think there may be some things where it absolutely makes sense for us to do so, particularly where we've got a long gap, as we have between Board 7 and Board 8, and it might be something that actually supports us both in effectively transitioning and moving forward, so I wanted to support that. And then lastly, returning to the point on rapidity, Ambassador Adao, I just wanted to support the points that my COFAC co-chair just made in terms of responding to that within the cycle that we are charged with on the BIM. I think we are discussing what is possible within the BIM. And I do think that we are going to be bringing back a few proposals for how we do learn on the application of the funding criteria and the funding cycle in this BIM phase, recognizing that we don't have, it's not the full operating model, so we're not going to be able to move to some of the aspects that Ambassador Adao you would like, but there are aspects, because they are included in the eligibility criteria, where we would want to see elements of rapid response eligible and conducted through BIM, and we should seek to learn from those and reflect on those as we go forward. So we'll bring those back as we work through. Thank you very much indeed, JC.
Thank you, Gérard. Sarah, yeah, is it your? No, it's a cost. Yes, Sarah, you are next and last.
Thank you. And very quickly, I wasn't going to speak. I did just want to support Gerard's point around some form of board retreat as we mature. I think, you know, I think lessons from other boards and funds I've been engaged in is that agreeing ways of working as a board, as this organisation matures, will be really useful. Thank you to Richard for the explanation about previous discussions on intersessional work. I do agree that we need to be very careful about not blurring where decisions are made, but I do also think that, again, perhaps in the future we could start to think about what useful work could be delegated to subcommittees, for example, where they may not be making decisions, but they may be taking forward work that they then bring back to the board. I think that the model that the co-chairs proposed just over the last couple of days of us breaking into working groups has been really constructive from my experience in the one board meeting. But I think that kind of model, if you had some type of subcommittee or even if it was a temporary working group that was delegated by the board to take some work forward that then they brought back to the full board intersessionally, might be something we could consider in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for this suggestion. If there is no more comment, I will now suspend the session. We will reflect on your suggestions and your comments, and specifically on how to deal with this long-term operationalization of the board, how the board should address this issue without overloading our activity in 2026, and potentially come back to you during this board meeting with another version to be adopted. Thank you, colleagues. And I will now turn to Richard for chairing the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. So now that we've been given a sense of what the board's priorities are for next year and then the forthcoming 2027 period, we need to turn to what is our immediate task right now, and that is the work plan of the Secretariat and the administrative budgets of the fund, right? So the board has before it document FRLD/B.7/5, which is the work plan of the Secretariat and administrative budget. So on the budget side, the Budget Committee has been reviewing the Secretariat's proposed administrative budget, and they've approved it. And the Budget Committee, subject to the co-chairs of that committee approving that I understand correctly, you've adopted the budget and forwarded that for approval to the Secretariat. I wonder if someone could just give Jose or Mark, can you just give, or would this Executive Director do that on your behalf? Just give the board a sense of what's in the budget. I don't know what the... Okay, so the Executive Director will just give you an indication of what's in the budget. At this point, let me give the floor to Ibrahima to present both the work plan and the administrative budget, and that's how we'll proceed. So colleagues, just remember this is a core decision for this meeting. We have to take a decision now, particularly on the budget. So Ibrahima, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, and thank you, JC. Let me bridge the protocol by thanking members of the board for your sympathy and solidarity over the past 2 days when I have not been feeling well. And I'm pleased to be back and join the rest of the board meeting and present on behalf of the Secretariat. I wanted to start by thanking members of the Budget Committee. I know we've troubled you a couple of times late at night in going through our budget, but you've always been there and making sure you provide the guidance that we need to present to the board what I'm about to present. A special mention to the co-chairs, Jose and Mark, again, for going the extra miles in guiding us, and I want to express our gratitude from the Secretariat for the incredible guidance you've been providing, but also for endorsing the budget we're about to present. Now, I understand board members have the detailed work plan, so I'm not going to go through all the details. What I want to do in this presentation is just provide some highlights and obviously take all the questions that you may have, not only me, but also the rest of my colleagues in the Secretariat. Let me just say broadly, our work plan is really guided by three things: the drivers, the deliverable we want to deliver in 2026, and then the resources that we need to actually deliver what we're asking you in the budget that we have discussed with the Budget Committee. Let me first go through the drivers, and I will walk you through the. Now, it is clear this is a moving target in the sense we are discussing the BIM, but at the same time also we have an obligation as a Secretariat in making sure we have an operational and functional Secretariat. So our priority number one in terms of the driver is to accelerate the optimization of the fund, and I will walk you through the deliverable we expect under that particular driver, which is extremely important as well. I think looking at the conversation we had earlier on the objective and the work plan of the board, it is clear it underscores the importance of the second driver, and that is making sure our governance and our system and the fundamentals and the long-term models are in place so that after the BIM, we have what it takes to scale up the work of the board. Last but not least, we intend to dedicate time and resources and energy in supporting the leadership of the board with regard to resource mobilization, not only on the strategy, but once the strategy is likely adopted, it needs to be implemented, and that implementation requires a lot of work, which we'll be prepared to support as well. Now, on the first objective or driver, there are a couple of deliverables that are obviously depending on the conversation we're having here at B7. And that is our intention, if the board has made a decision on the funding cycle, or the project criteria, or the modalities, and eventually also the terms of reference, which we have to fill in, obviously it puts us in a position in 2026 to not only launch, but to be effective like launching the BIM. So we at the Secretary obviously are anticipating on that decision being made here, so we can actually proactively support the board in launching the BIM as well. I think second, the expectation that we have as we continue to get the focal point across the developing countries, as the call for proposal is actually launched, we certainly expect lots of requests coming from different parts of the world. It is important, as a Secretary, we actually develop our screening process, and obviously that screening will be guided by the fact that the eligibility criteria, but also funding criteria, which will help us at least understand what we're getting from different sources that actually align with what the board expects as well. There's a lot of operational work to be done, particularly with regard to our operational manual. Again, our intention is not to take one deliverable at a time, but to take many deliverables together. But it is important to understand that some of this deliverable, particularly in the Secretariat, are subject to the decision made by the board, and that's why we wanted to put it out there to see that it's our intention to deliver on this. On the result measurement, it is also something on our list of deliverable. You may have received a document that just provides the broader framework, because that result measurement will be guided by two fundamental issues, and that is the result as far as the project we're funding, but result as far as the institution, which is the fund, in terms of our efficiency in delivering what we promised to do. The two combined will be guiding the detailed result measurement, and that's something that we intend to do also in 2026, obviously guided by the board. The M&E is also going to be part of a deliverable under that acceleration that we intend to do, but also as well the risk management framework, which obviously it's important, particularly with regard to the DBS and the access that we're going to be providing to the national government. We intend, as an institution, as a fund, in developing that framework as well. Now, number 5 is equally important, and that is what we call the BIM-FIBI policy. And here the distinction we're making, as funding is actually provided to countries, there is funding actually available to support the initiative the government wants to undertake, but there's also an oversight responsibility to make sure at least what we're being funded is actually properly overseen. And so we're hoping to get the BIM-FIBI policy in place, which allows us to be able to provide resources away from resources directly relevant to what we're being funded. Now, in 26, we also intend, and deliverable number 6, there's an ongoing process, and obviously in line with the GI, and making sure we work very closely with the funding arrangement. Now, we have started timidly in working together by involving them in high-level dialogues. We began to see the synergies between the different funds. I think eventually, as the BIM is actually approved, or we began to be open for the call for proposal, it will provide more clarity what the direction will be heading, whether it is pipeline generation, because we have the similar interests and supporting the same countries, whether co-funding opportunities, or whether advocacy, whatever it takes, but it's really important to see the complementarity between these different institutions. Last but not least, we believe once funding is provided to the countries, the next challenge that one has to look at very carefully is to make sure that portfolio that we are providing is actually managed, because so we can report to the board whether or not the funding we're providing is pretty much aligned with the expectation we have from different initiatives. So that framework and system is intended, is to be developed, in 2026, and that's part of our work plan. Now, moving on, as I said, the second deliverable, the second drivers, I should say, is to support a governance system and laying the foundation for the long-term model. I recall at B5 in Barbados, the board was very clear, the two things we had to do at the same time, and that is, as soon as we get the BIM on track, we need to begin to think about the longer-term model, and that is something that we want to do and together, hopefully at the right time when the BIM is on the right track, but that is something we intend to work on in 2026 as well. Now, as of today, we have an excellent relationship with the Budget Committee in providing detail in a very transparent way in terms of information, but we want to escalate that work into a framework in the way we do our budgeting and accounting, so that we can actually build the fundamental in a much more sustainable way, looking at Co-Chair Jose. I'm sure he likes that line. This is something that he's very much pushing us to do, as well as Co-Chair Mark as well. Now, we're going to also aggressively push recruitment of our critical staff. As I mentioned yesterday in briefing the board on our activities, I'm extremely delighted that by the end of October, we have recruited all the leads that we have been authorized to recruit at B5, and that will actually conclude what I call the management team of the Secretariat, from myself to the Deputy ED, and then the 5 leads in the 4 fundamental areas. So we have actually the fundamentals of the Secretariat. Now, our next task in terms of staffing is then to begin to look at the operational staff, so the analysts that we need, and making sure that in addition to the lead, we have the support as well. Now, knowledge management it's going to be extremely important as well. You may recall at B5 in Barbados, in the BIM actually approval, there was a clear line from the board and said we need to actually learn the lessons from the BIM. So therefore, we take knowledge management very seriously, because the outcome of the lesson learned from the BIM will actually inform the longer term policy, and that's why we intend to at least get the framework going in 2026 in our work plan. Now, last but not least, equally important as a driver, we certainly understand and recognize resource mobilization is a responsibility of the board, but it's also our responsibility to support the board so we can deliver in the resources to be mobilized to keep up with the demand of the countries, but also to keep up with the allocation of the board. So the good news, by the time the board is ready to engage in this, we have recruited a program manager. We have a core team around me because the board made it very clear. They want me to take the lead within the Secretariat in providing the support to the board. And that is a responsibility that I take very seriously, working very closely, obviously, with the Deputy ED. We can form a small committee around me and making sure we actually support the board as well. Now, second, I recall at B4, the board was very strong about our job is not to spend too much time converting pledges into actual funding. However, the Secretariat will remain available in working with the Trust Fund Department, wherever we need to actually provide update and the progress we're making. And we're pleased, actually, since last time we met, there's about 4 new conversion of pledges into actual cash. As you will see in the update of the Status of Resources, you can see there is a momentum since last time that we met, and I believe to a certain degree it's helpful for us as a Secretariat to provide the update as well. Now, following the successful high-level dialogue that was held last spring on the margins of the World Bank spring meeting, we are working toward the second high-level dialogue, which we hope to deliver in 2026. I've been reminded a couple of times by the co-chairs, this is not the high-level dialogue just of the fund, it's a high-level dialogue of the funding arrangement. It is very important that we work very closely with the UN Secretary General's office because they're part of the exercise, but also work with other funding arrangements to make sure that what's being discussed obviously is reflect what is being said in the GI when it comes to the high-level dialogue. Now, last but not least, my last word, and to the point of Ambassador Moore yesterday, our communication advocacy is not about just high-level dialogue. It's also about telling the story of this fund. It's about capturing the impact that comes out of the funding we're going to be providing. It's about making sure people actually understand what the fund can or cannot do. It's about the partnership we're building with other institutions. All that combined is part of our communications. But obviously, as the BIM gets implemented, the outcome of the BIM will feed into our communication, and that's why it's an evolving process, and we're hoping that what comes out of here will provide the content which will make our communication more credible as we engage with different stakeholders. So, Co-Chair, with your permission, I'll stop here and hand over to the Budget Committee, Abdul, to walk you through the numbers with your permission. Yeah, Abdul, very quickly.
Thanks, Ibrahima. And I will join you in thanking the members of the Budget Committee and the co-chairs of the Budget Committee in guiding us in this process. So, into the budgets, overall we are asking for 13.5 million, out of which about 1.6 million is for the board, 10.6 million for the Independent Secretariat. We don't have the Interim Secretariat budget for 2026, but we have put it in there for comparison purposes, so you can see the resources needed as the Interim Secretariat departs. Then about $1 million for Interim Trustee, and 300,000 for the contingency, a total of 13.5 million, 24% increase over 2025. Moving to the details of the change, here I want to show you how how the change is going and where are those increases going into each budget. So from 2025, 10.8 million, we have increased by 2.66 million to 13.5 million. The major increase, you can see it in the interim secretariat, but by netting off with the, independent secretariat, but by netting it off with the interim secretariat, the net increase is 2.1 million. Then minimal change in the board budget, and I'll go into the details in the following slides. And then interim trustee and contingency budget, a total of 2.66 million increase over 2025 budget. And on the right side, 80% of increase belongs to the independent secretariat, and that is the main driver of increase in the budget. Within the board budget, you will see an increase of 168,000 in board representative travel, but this is not the actual increase. Before, when the travel policy was not approved yet, and the budget committee and also the secretariat did not want to prejudge any decisions of the board to put that into the budget. So we had put this 168,000 into the contingency budget, and this was for the difference between the policy at that time and the board approved policy now. For 2026, now we are normalizing it and bringing it back from contingency into the board budget. The board meeting venue logistic almost remains the same. We have added the World Bank cost recovery. This is the 20.48% applied on direct cost. And in 2026, all the ticketing, DSA payments, everything will go through the World Bank systems and managed by Secretariat, and so the World Bank cost recovery will apply to it. We had discussed this in the budget committee, and we had also consulted with the World Bank budget team, and they have confirmed that this will apply to the board budget. Then into the independent secretariat, we have a total of 10.6 million. The biggest chunk of this relates to the staff cost. We will be going from 6 full-time equivalent staff to 18 full-time equivalent staff, or in other words, from 9 staff in 2025 to 23 staff in 2026. But we have adjusted a number of months based on the planned recruitments and also in consultation with the budget committee. We have consultants supporting different functions and mainly the BIM. Then the travel includes the travel for the COP travel and the board meetings and for country engagement as well. We have consulting firms, about 500K, and general operating cost of 330,000, decreased from last year, looking at the execution for 2025. The World Bank cost recovery standard applies at 20.4% to 1.8 million, and adding up to 10.6 million total. We have added interim secretariat here just to give you an idea of how it is a net increase with the resources. Then moving on to the split of the independent secretariat budget. 50% of the independent secretariat budget belongs to staffing, and that is the plan to resource the mandates properly through staffing. And as the staffing comes in, the consultancy budgets, which is the second one, 16%, which should go down, followed by consulting firms, but which would be higher just for the specialized services provided by them, which we don't have available in the secretariat. Travel at 9%. The World Bank cost recovery, you will see it at 17%, but this is just mathematical calculation. If you put everything else, it comes at 17%, but it's 20.48% of the total. On the right side, the budget increase from 2025 to 2026 of the independent secretariat is mainly in the staffing cost of 2.86 million, followed by consultancy and a relevant increase in the World Bank cost recovery, indirect cost. On the next slide, we We have the staffing plan, and this is as presented in the budget, or how the budget puts it. But our plan is to recruit the staff as fast as possible. So, and if needed during the year, we understand the board supports it and the budget committee supports to have staff onboarded as soon as possible. If we need any additional budget during the year, we can come back to the board for any additional budget. Then we have the projected salaries for 2027 and 2028 for the additional staff. It is needed by the World Bank in order to assign the employment contract with the incoming staff. Moving on to the interim trustee, we have overall the budget remains flat, but you can see as we would have less functions involved in financial management, in setting up the trust fund and also setting up the chart of accounts and reporting. So they have less resources needed. The investment management is at 4.5 basis points, a variable cost, or in other words, 0.045% of the average annual cash balance. We also have a representative from the trustee, and they can also answer any questions if needed. Then the contingency, it was in 2025, 248,000. It was a combination of 168,000 of the difference between the two travel policies and 80,000 added later on. We had moved the 168,000 here, but we have added, marked up to 250,000 to give some balance to the budget committee. This would be used by Secretariat in consultation with the budget committee of any, in case of any board decisions, needs, or any additional mandate not funded by the current budget. Over to you, Jesse.
Okay, thank you very much, Abdul, and thank you very much, Ibrahima. Do the budget committee co-chairs want to make an intervention? Here, I would note that for future reference, we don't have an agenda item where the committees can report back, so I'm not sure if we have a formal budget committee report to the board for accountability. So can we include that on the agenda for the next board meeting as a standalone item of report of committees where they exist, and so that the budget committee, I think just for good practice, that you account to us about how you're meeting, and that would then also enable us to have any issues emerging from your deliberations that you need to be addressed as budget committee matters to be addressed, rather than dealing with this under the report of the Secretariat. And can I also propose, if it's acceptable with the board, to not deal with the trustee report under this and rather have a separate agenda item in future on the status of resources? I think it's better to do that, as it's a general thing, not just the Secretariat budget matter. So let me open the floor for a comment by either one or both co-chairs of the budget committee. So, Mark. Jose.
Yeah, thank you, co-chairs. So we'd like to thank the Secretariat. By the way, I'm taking this intervention as a, not as a co-chair of the budget committee, but as a member of the board. So we'd like to thank the Secretariat for listening to the needs raised.
Sorry, Mark, please don't, this is just as either a budget committee chair, not as a member of the board, because we haven't opened up the discussion yet. So please, either just...
okay, in that case, so thank you for the correction. So I'm making this interpellation as a co-chair of the budget committee for developing country constituencies. So we'd like to thank the Secretariat for listening to the needs raised by the board and coming out with a tangible work plan and pathway for 2026. Having reviewed the budget proposal, we believe that it provides or it strikes a good balance between the requirements outlined by the board and the capacity needed by the Secretariat to carry out these requirements. So happy to hear that the accounting framework will be established moving forward. We envisage an accounting system which regularly churns out accurate, relevant and timely accounting information. On a separate note, we'd like to suggest that the Secretariat further evaluate the mechanics of the World Bank cost recovery system. So we note that there's a shotgun computation of 20.45% on all expenses, not only direct expenses as required by the host agreement. So we'd like further study on that moving forward. But in all, we support the 2026 work plan and budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark, Jose, please.
Thanks, Richard. And let me start by thanking the Secretariat and my fellow PC members for I think, the very constructive work over the past few weeks and months. I think we are in many ways on the right track. And thanks also, Ibrahima, for announcing that we will continue working on budgetary matters, including a framework in the near future. Now, just to flag to my fellow board members that this budget is based on our stepwise approach, meaning that you will see in the decision text, given the fact that we are in the middle of a transition to the permanent secretariat, and the budget execution always lags behind, so there's always a time gap of 2 months, roughly speaking, that we will need this year and next year's budget execution to properly align the system. That means that the reason why there's a stepwise approach is because we simply don't have the final numbers of budget execution 2025 yet. I think some colleagues have mentioned the under execution of the budget up until July. This is a natural thing to happen in an institution like the FILD that is in its infant steps and state. So I hope we can continue with that. On the multi-annual, on the budgetary framework, what I would like to see in the future is to even better align, and thanks, Ibrahima, you have started with one slide today, link the expected deliverables with the budget allocated, and also with the recruitment plan, so that we have, and also our fellow board members can benefit from the available data and insights to better understand what can be delivered when, and what kind of resources are needed by the Secretariat to actually implement the work plan of the board and the Secretariat and all the institutions involved here. So we're not on the right track, but we're in the middle of the journey. So we explicitly support the draft as presented.
Okay, thank you, Jose and Mark, for that, and we look forward in future to have your written report and a separate agenda item. Just before I open the floor, let me just confirm co-chair's understandings that in terms of the rules of procedure related to the absence of a member, in this case, although Mark is the budget committee co-chair, he's an alternate member and he's assuming the seat of the board member, so he can speak to the board, but the board member is still present in the room, and that for us is acceptable understanding because this is related to the committee business. It's not really related to absence. So just want to confirm that's our understanding of how to proceed with that. On that matter, colleagues, so it's almost 12:30. We have half an hour left. I understand that colleagues may wish to make detailed interventions on this. If that's the case, we would then suspend the session at 1 o'clock to allow for lunch and come back to that because there may be further time that Ibrahima needs to respond to your questions. But please, in your interventions, can you indicate your willingness to support the budget and then ask your questions to Ibrahima should you need be. So let me open the floor for comments from board members. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you for clarifying the status of how Mark is engaging. So thank you so much on that. And I have the following comments. One, following your question and the clarification that was provided by both Mark and Jose, I think I can support the budget as proposed, but I would request some clarifications from the Secretariat, so Ibrahima. So the first comment is that we see that you have the short-term consultants and then you have consultancy firms, and both of them are seeing a surge, with an understanding, of course, that there will be more work to be done, but I think at the same time we expected that you will be hiring more staff, so the surge is really very high compared to the expectation that we have of hiring more staff. The second element on the paragraph 35 on the short-term consultants, 35B, where the governance and the board affairs are almost given to consultants. They are doing everything, policy development, preparation of the documents, reporting, travel arrangement, record keeping. I think this is everything of the governance and the board affairs, and I think we should shift into just building the capacity of the secretariat and having people who understand very well the board and moving forward with the board. I think this should be one of the elements that should quickly move as permanent staff rather than short-term consultants. Thank you also for clarifying the issue of the communication advocacy and that is work in progress. And then my last point relates to, or my last 2 points. One is that in 35A and 37, the document is clearly saying that there will be a review of the projects based on environmental and social safeguards, the EES and gender issues, and which are not yet been approved by the board. So I don't know what will the consultants, and they are consultants, they are not even staff, on what basis are they going to do this review? And this is, as I said, clearly in 35A and in 37, where the project proposals will be screened for fiduciary policy, environmental, social safeguards, risk management framework, and functional equivalency. And I don't see it happening also in the work plan as it stands. So I don't know what kind of review or on what basis, what criteria they are doing that. Last point on paragraph 39, I'm kind of concerned with what is included there in the last part of it, which is following the launch of call of proposals, targeted missions to each region will be conducted by the programming and country engagement team to conduct workshops, to introduce the BIM modalities, present the funding criteria and funding request template, and engage with countries and entities to advise on accessing the fund. I don't know if this is something that is part of the comms, especially with the BIM, that we expect already that many countries know very well through the existing information and comms that they will be coming forward. But having missions going to each region and then countries, you don't only go there, you also go and you organize a workshop and you invite the members or like representatives from the country. So this is a big events. Those are big events in the different regions. I don't know if this is something that could be done for the BIM. It could be done in a further stage, and I'm concerned with this extensive travel that will be linked to this very specific paragraph in 39. Not trying to micromanage or anything, but I think the issue of travel versus the focus on establishing the secretariat and delivering the work is something that we need to be balanced in dealing with. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mo. Anna. We'll ask Ibrahima to respond to your questions after Anna's comments. Or Jan. I say Anna and then Jan. Please, Anna.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think also in general we can support the budget, but maybe just as a general comment that in the future we will need much more granularity on both the budgeting and then especially on the spending, particularly when it comes to these very large budget lines, which is the consultancies and the traveling. We don't really know what is included in them. And also it was good to hear from Mark. I also consider that it's important that we get some more information on what all is included in the cost recovery of the World Bank, because this seems to be a larger element than I had, for example, presumed. But maybe this this is exactly the kind of things that we could cover, for example, in some kind of info sessions between meetings. So that could form part of the intersessional work as well. But of course, in the future, documents, we need more granularity as well. And I'd also very strongly support Jose's proposal on in the future more clearly linking the deliverables to the resources. And this also links to the future discussion we'll have on the kind of secretariat structure and kind of knowing also where the staff is linked to the kind of deliverables. Then some more detailed comments on the secretariat work plan and budget. In general, we welcome the work plan by the secretariat, and we note the very heavy workload that the secretariat has ahead of it in 2026, when it still has quite modest human resources. We therefore urge the ED and management to ensure that the fund clearly prioritizes its time and efforts on where it matters the most, namely ensuring that the operations and especially the BIM start running smoothly. So this really means focusing first and foremost on the key policies and building the secretariat. We believe in this seat that the operations and the activities supported by the funds will eventually be the things that will position it as the global leader, not the outreach and visibility activities. So yes, communications is important, but it will become gradually more important once there are actual projects and results that we can communicate about. That should not be the main focus now. And we explicitly call for less travel at this stage. On paragraph 39, on the question of workshops, I very strongly support the comments by Mo. I think those are quite time and resource consuming, and I'm not sure that regional workshops would also treat all countries in a region equitably. Then I'd like to raise a small detail financially, but more important from a kind of principled point of view. We don't think the FRLD should have its own pavilion at COP31. We think it should rather request to join the joint pavilion of the other vertical climate funds. This is a very practical example of seeking complementarity and coherence and ensuring cost efficiency and helping ease the workload. Are we discussing the board budget now as well, as part of the admin budgets? Yeah? So on the board budget more specifically, well, the point on the size of the travel budget on attending board meetings is something that is of concern to us, both the secretariat travel to board meetings, but also the board travel. And we note that the cost for board representative travel is more than double of that of the GCF board for 2026, even though both funds have a very similar setup and travel policy. So it will be really useful to understand how we have come up with like over $1 million for board travel, not including the World Bank cost recovery, for example. And then, yeah, I mean, we do underline there's a reputational risk to spending about, and this is a conservative estimate of about $1.8 million a year on board travel. So it really should keep us in a very focused mindset on what we achieve here. And we also urge the Secretariat to keep their travel to board meetings to essential staff only once the size of the Secretariat increases. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So I think maybe one of the reasons why the difference is that the GCF Secretariat is stationed in the same place where the board meets. So that's possibly one of the reasons why there's a difference of yeah, again, that's for the Secretariat as well, which you mentioned. So again, to encourage colleagues to use their members on the Budget Committee, that's the main primary vehicle for the interrogation of the board budget and different proceedings. If we try and retransact the discussions that should take place in the board committee, we're not just being efficient, we're undermining the committee's work. So again, just to encourage you to speak to your representatives there. I think there are 5 from each side, from each constituency. So there's adequate representation there. So, but thank you, Anna. I have on my list Jan, Antoine, Adal, Sarah, and I believe there was a comment from the observers, but you guys are so far away from us, we can't see you here. Was that a flag up from observers or not? Yeah, so that's the youth, right? Okay, thank you. We'll come to you afterwards. So please go ahead, Jan.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for presenting the work plan and the budget. It is indeed a significant deliverable of this board meeting, and from this seat we will be happy to support the budget for 2026. But let me make a few comments. Firstly, we appreciate the work of the budget committee with the secretariat. But if we could please receive the budget not during the informal day of the board, but earlier, so that we maybe avoid specific questions and trying to understand on the go in a busy agenda of the meeting. So. And that would be really helpful. I didn't intervene yesterday in thanking the interim secretariat for their engagement, which concludes with this board meeting, but want to do it now in connection with, of course, the fact that this has a major implication for how the secretariat will be going forward alone and supported by the consultants and, of course, from the board side. But that's an important milestone. I very much echo what was said about the capacity alignment in between what the Secretariat is able to do with the staffing, with the budget that has been assigned, and with the deliverables, and knowing that the dynamics needs to be taken into account, including what we are going to agree in this meeting will have implications for the capacities to be put into implementing our decisions. So careful planning will be needed, and that's where also we rely on the budget committee to continue the steering. We discussed yesterday in one of the working groups on the resource mobilization the significance of the fiscal health of the fund, and in relation to that, the commitment authority. We will need to address it at some point somewhere, but it is important, not least for the success of our future resource mobilization, that we have a good grasp of the fiscal health of the fund and the spending of the resources and the accountability. Final point: the responsibilities of the Secretariat will also depend on what we decide on the BIM access modalities. So just to stress that this will need to be taken into account, and that relates again to the dynamics of the triangle between the staffing, the budget, and the deliverables. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jan, do you want to respond, Ibrahim? And I'll take the next three comments. So Ibrahim.
Well, thank you very much, members of the board, and thank you for your support to the budget that we presented. Let me provide some answers, but also bring in my colleague, in particular the Deputy ED, to take one of the questions by Ambassador Mo. I think Ambassador Mo, on the consultant and consulting firm, what I'm prepared to say, which I said the other day, our intention, as we grow our staff, to depend less and less on consulting firm, and that is the aspiration that we have. And then second, there's also reality, and that is that as soon as we're done at B7, we're going to get to preparing B8, while we're actually recruiting our staff. So we do not want any gap, particularly in governance and board affairs, to provide the support necessary to organize the board in Zambia. And as you recall, and we said earlier, the interim secretary is no more after this, so we're now on. It's important that we get organized, and that's the reason why we may have to rely on temporary support, and I just want the board to bear with us, knowing that, as I said earlier, our intention is to accelerate our recruitment so we can get the staff needed. But it is not a long-term solution, it's a temporary solution so that we can get what we need. I think in consulting firm in particular, I want to just reassure you, our intention is not to actually abuse that in the long run, because as we build the capacity internally, we rely less and less on those consultants. But the reality is the Secretariat has to keep up with the ambition of the board, and sometimes I wonder how we do it with few people back in Washington. to manage to provide you all this paper so you can make decisions, but partly it's because the DD and myself are involved on a daily basis in making sure we provide the guidance. So what we present to you, it's not the work of the consultant. What we present to you, it's a work clear, guided by us, not by consultant. It's not a consultant-driven papers. It's really driven by us, and I want to reassure the board on that. Now, on the workshop, I understand the concern of the board, but our expectation is that the minute we run the call for proposal, you will see the interest generated pretty much all over the countries that want the support from FRLD. So we have a couple of opportunities that we can leverage to get the information out. So our intention is not just to go to a region just for the workshop. Our intention that, let's say you go to the African Climate Summit happening somewhere in Africa, on the margins of participating in the event, you can leverage that opportunity to basically have a workshop with some of the particular target that you have. In addition to that, as we engage bilaterally, we can also use that opportunity to get the information out. But we're also expecting, as you may have recalled, you may have seen, even though the board decided at B6 to have a focal point, as of today, we only have 20 out of 150. So my guess is the minute that the call for proposal is launched, you can see a rush for the focal point to at least go out there and make itself known. And we need to canalize that energy and that interest that we have with the fund. And that's, so we're going to use that selectively, smartly, and not just travel for the sake of traveling, but traveling just to get the information out there, and that's what we intend to do on that. Now, just to your point, Ambassador Moore, this is not a communication, it's part of our country engagement. So communication is a different thing for us, but it's more us engaging with country, engaging with region, to make sure that our eligibility criteria are fully understood, our template we're putting out there are fully understood, our guidelines are understood, so that when requests come our way, they're closer to what we're looking for. And that's the intention behind this workshop. But I can assure you, traveling 15, 20 hours to some different countries is not a fun thing to do, but it's something we have to do to get closer to at least educating ourselves the reality of the countries we're supposed to support, and that's the intention behind that. Now, just to reassure Anna, on the COP30, we do not have intention to actually have a standalone pavilion. At 31. Right. However, the way we're approaching this, and this is pretty much why we reach out to the funding arrangement, the GCF and the CIF and the GEF and adaptation, in constant conversation in terms of how we can actually join forces in organizing side event, but also sharing pavilion. So I just want to reassure you, our intention is not to go and have a big pavilion at the COP, but to leverage other entities to make sure we actually provide some visibility to the fund, but also make sure the information goes out there. What we intend to do at the COP, beyond just having the pavilion, is we get lots of speaking engagement that have nothing to do with spending any money in terms of having a pavilion. So that's also an opportunity for us to get the word out in terms of what the fund is about, and that's what we intend to do. So, Co-Chair, if you allow me, I'm going to ask our Deputy ED, Mathilde, to say a few words on the ESS question came from Mo. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So just to come back on the organization of the BEAM delivery team, so indeed under the coordination of the Secretariat, we will recruit a team of external experts, which is budgeted for in this budget, which has been built on the assumption of 100 proposals. And you noticed that Jose reminded that a stepwise approach could allow us to review these needs, notably in case we receive more proposals, which may very well happen. So within these external experts, we indeed anticipate one or two environmental and social and gender specialists to be able, on a time-based, it's not full-time people, it will depend on the need of the work, and the idea is to notably support the compliance review that we need to handle on these topics as listed in the project cycle. This is different from the fiduciary and ENS assessment that need to be done for functional equivalency of the countries. That has been discussed in another, in the working group currently. That is clearly proposed to be fully externalized in a way, and this is what you have under the line of the consultancy firm. This is the largest share of this one. Let me stop there.
Okay, thank you. I hope colleagues are satisfied with the answers. No, you're not. Can you just, again, make
Thank
sure
you.
before I move on?
I had a very specific question, because here you said in the document that the consultants will be reviewing the project proposals from the perspective of the environmental and social safeguards and on gender. And we don't have those policies in place, so I don't know which guidelines will the consultants use, because first, they are not part of the secretariat. Two, we don't have policies in place from our side or results that we have identified. So what kind of review are they going to do? And this is clearly mentioned there. If it was review based on the fund policies, I would have understood that, but very specifically on those elements, including like functional equivalency is even included there. So I don't know what kind of review, what kind of criteria, unless you have a different perspective. Just to clarify this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mo. You want to respond to that now, or?
Thank you. I think it's for this one, we just wanted to clarify. Indeed, the FRLD does not have ESS gender fiduciary policies in place. And this is something I believe the co-chairs have guided us as well to look into what the standards would be that we would apply in the absence of our own. In terms of the review done by the BIM delivery team, this is really at the activity level, and we understand for the access entities, we will be relying on the policies and systems of those access entities. So we do not do any further due diligence reviews or any alignment reviews. It would be a simple check to ensure the access entity has indeed conducted those reviews according to their policies. So it is just to say that we would need those experts to do that very light touch check. The other part of it is, as we are all discussing the functional equivalency of national governments, and we understand this is in discussion by the board. So we have put in place, in case there is support required, it would be done through the support of the BIM delivery team. So we hope this can clarify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next on my list is Antoine Adao, followed by Sarah, and then the youth people. And colleagues, we have 9 minutes, so if required, we will break for lunch and come back to this, but please go ahead, Antoine.
I can yield because my points were raised and addressed by Ibrahima and Mathilde.
Okay, thank you very much for setting a precedent. Colleagues, please follow Antoine's precedents. If your issue has already been raised, you do not need to take the floor, so thank you. That was quicker than the term of your government records. Let me go to Adao.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Thanks, Antoine, for a very quick intervention. And my point is exactly same as the question written by Ambassador Mo, and it was responded correctly. But in terms of timeline, because we also need to consider the budget itself, and we also need to consider the urgency of assessment for direct budget support that we discussed yesterday in terms of data collection and also ad hoc assessment at national level. I think it takes time, so we need to see the timeline because it links to the decision that we had in Barbados that we need to fit into 2 years, right? But budget plan is quite acceptable for us. We need to get some clarity around the issue that I just mentioned. And secondly, it issue related to recruitment of external experts I raised this issue as well yesterday, and then we need to include this into the Secretariat's document, and it was also explained by the Secretariat, but we need to have a timeline because we really do see that this is urgency of the implementation of the BEAM. And in terms of communication and advocacy, I yesterday mentioned about the Secretariat's communication with the UNFCCC national focal points from the developing countries, communicates with them and request them to submit their respective national designated authority or authorities or national focal points to deal with a development of funding request, because one of the critical outcomes that the Secretariat present to us will be the call for proposal by COP30. So before that, we need to have something in place, or at least after the launching of the call for proposal or funding request, at least communications with national entities or national governments will be taking place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adar. Sarah, I'm sorry, which one? Sarah, right? Sorry.
I say Sarah, but I don't mind.
Okay.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to say, I agree with the points raised by colleagues about travel and the need to be careful, but I do, this does need to be context specific. In our region, the Pacific is the largest geographical region with some of the most isolated countries in the world, and I just wanted to thank the FRLD for attending a regional loss and damage workshop. New Zealand helped finance participation of Pacific countries at that workshop, and in that region, that really is the most efficient and effective way to talk to as many people as possible. That doesn't preclude, of course, the other forms of outreach to countries and national focal points, but just want to encourage the FRLD that in our region, we would love you to keep using those regional opportunities to come and talk to us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So my last speaker is the colleagues from the youth constituencies. No, sorry, Antonella. Sorry, I didn't see your flag.
A quick request and proposal in terms of terminology, because in this document and discussion, there is this term expert and external. Expert is used in different contexts and could potentially lead to confusion. On one hand, there are the experts supporting the Secretariat in its regular work, and including the preparation of technical documentation. And these experts clearly operate under the direct coordination and responsibility of the Secretariat, if I understand. Then on the other hand, we are currently discussing the possible establishment of a separate external mechanism to support the functional equivalence assessment under the paragraph of 49A1. And this expert could serve a different purpose and operate under a different institutional arrangement. So maybe to avoid confusion, I would propose that this second group be referred with a more distinct and descriptive term, such as advisor, independent unit, senior advisory panel, whatever, but to clearly differentiate those experts from the technical expert working under the Secretariat responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Antonella. So, colleagues, let's be clear that we haven't yet decided on that. I hope we do. The assumption is that we will take those decisions and they would have to be reflected in an updated budget, which goes back to Jose's really important point that I fully support, maybe not in those discussions where you've been having them, but I fully support, because we do need to understand what are the implications of our decisions on the finances and the commitment authority. So we look forward to some recommendation coming from the right people around how to manage this in the future. So thank you. The colleagues from the youth, you wanted to make a quick intervention. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Co-Chair. This intervention has been coordinated between observer constituencies, and we would like to highlight 3 issues under this agenda item. First is on the BIM and the long-term operationalization of the fund. We want to reinforce some of the previous comments from several board members on working in parallel both with the short-term and long-term modalities. While we recognize the importance of ensuring that the fund can disburse funding as soon as possible, we want to warn against the overly focusing on the Barbados implementation modalities at the expense of developing the important long-term modalities that will allow the fund to function effectively at the scale required to actually meet the needs of climate vulnerable countries and their communities. No matter what the BIM looks like, it will only be a fraction of what is needed. Right now, the funding available is not even 0.1% of yearly needs. The focus of the 2026 work plan must be on scaling up the funding as soon and drastically as possible, and ensuring that the policies are in place to build a well-functioning, accessible, inclusive, and community-driven FRLD in line with legal obligations. This includes dedicated mechanisms to ensure direct access for communities in line with their right to remedy for climate harm. Just yesterday morning, outside of this building, communities who were impacted by Super Typhoon Haiyan and Super Typhoon Odette participated in a protest outside this venue, calling on the board to fulfill their responsibilities in providing much-needed funding to address the climate impacts that have devastated lives and continue to do so. The resource mobilization should be prioritized based on responsibilities and accountability, strong and comprehensive participation modalities, and a set of policies to guarantee that the fund does no harm and that it advances human rights, including the rights of indigenous people. On our second point is on the build-up of the capacity of the Secretariat. While we appreciate that there will be an increase in staff capacity, including the commitment to dedicated environmental, social, and gender expertise, and also a promised observer liaison staff, we are concerned that the 2026 administrative budget shows the largest increase toward external consultants and consultancy firms. World Bank human resources and procurement rules raise expenses further and limit the choice of outside expertise with fresh thinking that the BIM and the long-term operations of the fund need. This outsourcing and over-reliance on short-term consultants and consultancy firms is not good for both the independence of the Secretariat as well as strengthening the internal capacity, expertise, and learning of the Secretariat. And our last point is on the cost recovery and the comments by board members that we need more detail on this. Already 17% of the independent Secretariat budget was spent on World Bank's cost recovery for hosting expenses in the first half of the year, and costs rise with the increase of the Secretariat's administrative budget sought here at B7 to over $2 million in 2026. This is money that cannot go to communities and countries in need. We wanted to highlight that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So, colleagues, that comes into our comments. I wanted to, before I give the floor to Ibrahima to respond, I wanted to ask if I could give the floor to colleagues from the World Bank, maybe to clarify what has been said about the cost recovery, and then I'll ask Ibrahima to make a comment or respond, and then I'll ask you to adopt the decision, please. Thank you. Renaud, welcome. Colleagues, many of you may remember our colleague a friend from the bank who's been working very closely with co-chairs and the Secretariat. So, Renaud, please clarify as you need to on the cost recovery.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon. So I'm Renaud Seligman, Director for Strategy and Operations in the World Bank Planet Vice Presidency. For those of you who don't know me, I've had the pleasure to work with many of you for many months on the setting up of this fund and the negotiations of the hosting and trustee agreement. So I wanted to respond to some of the comments of colleagues around the table, and maybe to refresh the memory of those newer members of the board and participants about that discussion. Because we have had extensive discussions, both in the plenary in the board, as well as in the context of the budget committee on this issue of cost recovery. And I'll just go to the key elements of it. So for any organization that provides support to the activities of a fund like this, you have direct costs and you have indirect costs. Direct costs are the staffing, the consultants, the travel and the like. And indirect costs is all the support functions that are needed for those activities to take place. They need HR, they need legal, they need IT, they need cybersecurity support, they need communication, etc. Right? So all of these necessary costs that allow the direct cost activities to take place have to be covered in some way, shape, or form. In the context of the interim secretariat, those costs were also covered. They were covered in the overall fee that was paid to the interim secretariat. In the context of the World Bank, we have a board policy that all of the countries that you represent have approved, that sit at the board of the bank, which imposes greater transparency in the way in which we disclose and charge for those costs. We disclose separately the direct costs and the indirect costs, which is why you see two lines instead of one, which is what you would see for, say, the interim secretariat. Those costs are very reasonable. They have been assessed externally, including independently. We have shared the report with the budget committee that was satisfied with the conclusion it had reached that the direct costs were set at a level that was commensurate with the actual cost of providing the support that the FRLD and all the other financial intermediary funds that benefit from these indirect costs need to recover. And to give you an illustration of what we're talking about, let's assume that the fund spends $250 million as part of the BIM, and that there are $10 million in direct secretariat cost for staffing, travel, conferences and the like. The indirect costs that would be levied against this would be about 2.5 million. So you'd have a total spend of 262.5 million and an indirect cost recovery of 2.5 million, which is less than 1% of the total spend. So I think we have to keep things into perspective. There's especially because during the same period that this indirect cost recoveries are being naturally applied for greater transparency, the revenue of interest from the amounts of money that have been deposited into the fund account amounted to more than 11, close to $12 million, right? So, and that was invested by the World Bank Treasury for the benefit of the fund. So I think we need to keep things into perspective. The indirect cost recovery is actually a form of transparency. We stand behind that methodology. It's been extensively discussed with the budget committee. And on the basis of that methodology, the hosting agreement was approved by yourselves and was signed. And that's the basis on which we are operating. So I think that's very clear. There's also complete clarity on the accounting framework, which is a modified cash accounting framework, which has been explained to the budget committee in some detail as well. And there is total transparency on that as well. With that, back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Renaud, on a personal matter, can I ask you if the World Bank is able to invest my pension money for me? Thank you very much. So thank you, colleagues. So let me, before I ask you to adopt the decision, let me make two, before I ask Ibrahima to respond, actually. Can we attempt at the next board meeting to have a more detailed interaction with the World Bank on the cost recovery, because I think it's going to be important for us when we eventually initiate the review of the World Bank performance, that we've at least had a process or demonstrate that not only was there a direct engagement with the bank and the budget committee, but there was also some sessions managed between the board and the World Bank outside of the budget committee's deliverables, so that we fully understand the cost recovery. And then secondly, to Ibrahima that for next year's work plan, can that please be distributed to the board at the same time it's sent to the budget committee? There seems to be still some confusion whether this mandate sits with the budget committee. It's clear the budget component is with the committee, but the work plan should have been circulated to the board much earlier, giving colleagues the opportunity to make questions around that. So can we do that for next year, please? And then let me give you the floor to respond.
Thank you, Richard. And very briefly, a couple of questions brought up by the board members, starting with Adao. You talked about the project cycle timeline. Obviously, this is not the presentation we made, but your point is well noted that that timeline has to be, as you talked about, sort of short enough so that we can actually deliver in our project cycle. I think with regard to the staffing plan, Adao, we actually do have a detailed staffing plan which guide the way we actually recruit staff with the support of the World Bank. If this is of interest to the board, we'll be happy to share that, but I just want to reassure you, it is extremely transparent because it's actually listed within the bank website, within our website, all different platforms. However, if the board wants to help in getting the information out, we'll be happy to share with you those announcements so you can share in your network, and that will be extremely helpful as well. With regard to leveraging the focal point to get the word out, your suggestion is well taken. We'll make sure at least once the call for proposal is actually launched, even before that, we'll make sure that the focal point starts sending the letters so we can actually put that on our website. That's well taken. And Sarah, thank you very much for your kind words with regard to our participation to the Samoa event. We'll continue to do that. And I want to extend that to all the board members. If you have an event that you think it's a great opportunity for us to come and talk about the fund, but do it in a way that we can at least have this engagement. And I'm speaking to Antonella, who's invited me to speak in Italy. I'm sure other board members have also had invitations coming forward. And that is something that we do. But I just want to reassure you, we will not just travel for the sake of traveling. We travel and try to combine 2 or 3 different things at the same time so that we can bring to the maximum the opportunity that we have in traveling. As with Antonella, your point is well taken. We need to clarify expert and advisors. And if we need to, well, we will clarify that, let's put it, make sure it's actually clear to your point. So to the observers in the back, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Indeed, we're not saying we're just doing the BIM and at some point we'll do the longer term policy. If you look at it in my presentation, the 2 pillars are going hand in hand actually in that line of work. So we're not just doing the BIM and then at some stage we're going to do the longer term policies. So once we get the BIM on track, that obviously the team that we're hiring, we will continue to work on the longer term policies and also supporting the board and the resource mobilization strategy and the other governance related policy we have to put in place. So we're doing 2 things at the same time. It may not be seen, but that's basically the way we are conducting our operation. I just want to also reassure you, as I said before, our intention is not to continue depending on consultant forever. And we, as we grow our staff, our intention is actually to expand and strengthen our internal capacity as a secretariat. But the reality is we have to keep up with the board. And the board's deliverable and expected is such that if you don't have the human capital, we can't bring the right papers to the board and for the board to make decisions. But I can assure you, again, what comes to the board, it's not a consultant-driven papers, it's the leadership of the secretariat-driven, and that's the reason why it's really important to understand that the quality control that the DED and myself put on the table reassure us we present something to the board that's actually credible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ibrahima. So thank you, colleagues, for that discussion. Can I ask the Secretary to please put the decision on the screen? There is a slight amendment to the decision. Something was omitted, which was essentially just the reference for us to adopt the work plan. So again, it's not a Jose.
Thanks, Richard. Just to avoid misunderstandings for your earlier request on making the document available to the board and the BC at the same time. Are you talking about the work plan or the work plan and budget?
So let's be clear, the budget sits with your committee and you're mandated to assess that and to make a recommendation on the budget, but you don't have a mandate to make any recommendations on the work plan. So the proposal is for the work plan to be distributed once it's concluded so that the board could take more time. We only got it 2 days ago or yesterday, so that's very late. It doesn't give board members the opportunity to interrogate. We understand the deep association between the two documents, right? But at some point, you do your work and the board does its understanding of the work plan so that colleagues can have questions to the Secretariat. I think it's good for accountability. It's good for a practice that the board members can comment on the priorities of the Secretariat. So just be clear, we're not duplicating. The budget sits with the budget committee. It's very clear. So that was my recommendation. Okay, so I can't read that at all, sorry. But there's an inclusion, and let me put my glasses on, that would help. There's an inclusion in paragraph B, which just says the work plan and budget, right? So that's the only amendment. So colleagues, you've had this decision. It's gone through the budget committee. Can I take it that the board is prepared to adopt the decision as amended? Thank you. Seeing no objections, the decision is so adopted. Thank you. And that's lunchtime. Let me, before lunch, before you break, we're going to convene in the working groups, in the continuation of the working groups at 2:10 in the same rooms that you were in. We will give you 1 hour for discussion, right? Then you will come back to us, and then we'll open the discussion on, in an executive session, on the performance evaluation that we've done and the future performance evaluation. And then should those of you in committees want to go back to committees, we'll make it available, except for the group on access modalities, because that one has a time limit that we discussed with the co-chairs, that we actually need that output to continue the preparation of the documentation that we would send to you this afternoon, so that there's time for you to go back and consult your capitals. So if we continue that deliberation into the evening, then we will not be able to give you a document to go back to capital. So that group is being treated differently. So the other two groups on resource mobilization and Elena and Gerard's group on the cycle, you can go back after we finish the agenda for today. So on that, colleague, thank you very much. So apparently the women's group, or whatever that thing is, which we have no idea about, is having their own lunch without the rest of us. So a men's lunch is in where we had yesterday, and those colleagues who identify as being women and who are women, you will be meeting in Sea Lounge, wherever that is. I have no idea. So enjoy your various lunches. Thank you.